Day to each and everyone. Today we are going to discuss the human population. Okay, next. But before that, let's learn about the learning outcomes of this topic. After studying the chapter, you should be able to first trace the history of human population growth, summarize a different perspective on population growth, analyze some of the factors that determine population growth, explain how ideal family size is culturally and economically dependent. Next is describe how demographic transition can lead us to stable population size. And next one is relate how family planning gives us choices and reflect on what kind of future we are creating. Next one is let's discuss about the saying of H.L. Mencken that for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. Sa lahat daw ng problema or malalaking problema, laging may sagot na klaro, simple o at mali. But before we proceed to our main topic, let's discuss about the case study, a family planning in Thailand, a success story. As you can see in this picture, the Minkai Virabadya at the right is joined by Peter Peyot, Executive Director of UNAIDS, in passing out free condoms on the Family Planning and AIDS Awareness Day in Bangkok. Or the Population and Communication Development Association is a non-governmental organization founded by Mikhail Virabadya on 1974. Ang layunin ng organisasyon na iyon is mapababa yung population growth rate ng Thailand. And naging successful naman yung population growth rate ng Thailand. Kasi noong 1974, kung ang growth rate is 3.2%, then noong maipatupad na ang PDA or nagbigay na sila ng mga free condoms and every streets or yung kung may maraming tao, nagbibigay sila ng mga free condoms, then bumaba yung growth rate nila into 1.6%. Kaya, accordingly sa case study na to, naging successful yung family planning ng Thailand. Next one is, let's proceed to the population growth. As you can see in this picture, they are Mayan families from Guatemala, and it shows here there are 4 out of 6 children. Accordingly, decision on how many children to have are influenced by many factors, katulad ng culture natin, religion natin, and need for old age security para sa mga parents, immediate family finances, household health or katulong, child survival rates, and power relationship within the family. And the other one is, having many children may not be in the best interest for social at large, but may be the only rational choice for individual families. Kung ang iba daw or sa karamihan na society is hindi pabor sa pagkakaroon ng maraming children or anak, but some families or individual families made their choice to have a large number of families. Next slide. Human population grows slowly and relatively recently. Accordingly, archaeological evidences and historical description suggest that only about 300 million people were living at the time of Christ. 300 million daw yung taong naninirahan noong kapanahunan ni Christ. At makikita nyo naman sa table natin, table 7.1, world population growth and doubling times. In 500 BC, there are only 100 million people. Figure at 80-20-50 estimated there are 8,920 million people. The larger and more secure food supply made available by the agricultural revolution allowed the human population to grow, reaching perhaps 50 million people by 5000 BC. 4,000 of years, the number of humans increased very slowly. Until the Middle Age, human population were held in check by diseases such as famine or the extreme scarcity of food and wars that made life short and uncertain for most of the people. As you can see in the figure 7.3, human population began to increase rapidly after AD 1600. Human population level through history since about AD 1000, our population curve has assumed a J curve. You can see in the figure there is a J curve here, the flag pointed by arrow. As the Industrial Revolution or the modern times arrived, the population growth has rise rapidly. The next one is the perspectives on population growth. Next. Does environment or culture control human population? There are two persons argued about does environment or culture control human population. According to Thomas Malthus, argued that exists population growth is the ultimate cause of many other social and environmental problems. Ang punot dulo daw ng lahat ng problema natin, according kay Thomas Malthus, is the excess population growth. Kaya nag-rise yung mga problems or the environmental problem. According naman kay Karl Marx, nag-oppose siya sa sabi ni Thomas Malthus. They argue that oppression and exploitation are the real causes of poverty and environmental degradation. Population growth and this view is symptoms or result of other problems, not the source. According to him, according kay Karl Marx, ang punot dulo daw ng lahat ng problema or environmental problems natin is about exploitation and oppression. Ang population growth lang daw is hindi siya source or it is only a symptoms or result of the other problems. Next one, as you can see in this figure 7.5, the estimated spanning 300 years of thinking converts on a median value of 10 to 12 billion people in this world. We are about 7 billion strong today and growing an alarming prospect for some. Okay, next one. Technology can increase carrying capacity for humans. Number 1, optimists argue that Malthus was wrong in his prediction of famine and disaster 200 years ago because he failed to account for scientific and technical processes. According sa mga optimist, mali daw yung prediction ni Malthus about 200 years ago. In fact, food supplies have increased faster than population growth since Malthus' time. According to them, mas nag-i-increase daw yung food supply kaysa population growth noong kapanahunan ni Malthus. Technology can be double-edged sword. It can help us solve problems, but also present them at the same time as it causes environmental damages. Accordingly, technology could help us to solve problems, but also pwede din silang makasira or magdulot ng mga environmental damages. Kasi ang technology is may maganda at mabuting dulot ito. Summary the concept as I equals PAT formula. It says that our environmental impact, I, are product of our population size, or the P, size affluence, or the A, and the technology, and T, used to produce the goods and services we consume. The next one is population growth could bring benefits. Accordingly, one of the most popular theories of human evolution is that people are the ultimate resource and that their population growth will not cause pollution, crime, unemployment, crowding, or loss of species. Sabi nila, may mga theories na ang human evolution are the ultimate resource and ang population growth ay hindi nagkukos ng pollution, krimen, unemployment, crowding, or loss of species. Next, in developing countries, leaders insist that instead of being obsessed with population growth, we should focus on the consumption of world resources by richer country. Sa mga developing countries daw, instead na ang problemahin natin is yung population growth. Why not mag-focus tayo sa consumption ng world resources ng mga richer country? Kung ano yung mga resources nila, kung bakit sila nagiging rich countries. In this figure, it will be elaborated at my last report later. Next, let's proceed to the many factors determine population growth. But first, let's define what is demography. Demography is derived from the Greek words demos, which means people, and graphos, which means to write or to measure. The next one, How many people are there? According to this, the highest population growth rates occurs in a few hotspots in sub-Saharan American and Middle East. India is expected to overtake China as the world's most populous country by 2050. Kasi, di ba, sa world population natin, ang pinaka number one na populated or populous country is ang China. As of 2050 daw, mau-overtake or yung spot ng China is mapapalitan ng India at ang India ang magiging the most populous country as of 2050. Ang Nigeria naman is forecast to have nearly 300 million people as of 2050. Bangladesh is already overcrowded at 150 million people and could become even more if rising sea levels aren't up to the problem. In the picture, we live in two demographic worlds. One is the rich, the technologically advanced, and has an elderly population that is growing slowly. And on the other hand, is as the poor, crowded, underdeveloped, and growing rapidly. The growth or the population growth is growing rapidly. Okay, next one, as you can see, the table 7.2, the world's largest country. In many of this country, rapid population is a serious problem, and Bangladesh, about size of Iowa, is already overcrowded at 150 people. The other demographic world is made up of richer countries of North America, Western Europe, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. World is wealthy, old, and mostly shrinking. Italy, Germany, Hungary, and Japan, for example, all have negative growth rate. As you can see in this figure, the upper and the lower one. These countries represent 80% of the world population, but more than 90% of all projected growth. As you can see, this is the world total. The less developed regions, their population growth is high, while the more developed region, their population is more like steady or it is very slow. Or the population growth of the more developed country are low. Okay, the next one is the population of many African countries are now falling because of this terrible disease. As you can see in the figure, that in the PPT, that without age, the population growth of the African is very high. And noong dumating yung AIDS is bumaba yung population rate ng African. Next one is, as you can see, this figure shows the human population distribution around the world. The next one, fertility measures the numbers of children born to each woman. For that, let's discuss some terms to be able to understand. Crude birth rate, the number of births in a year per thousands of persons. Total fertility rate is the number of children born to average woman in a population during her entire reproductive life. Ito yung number ng children na pinanganak ng isang average woman sa kanyang duration ng kanyang reproductive life. Ang zero population growth naman, or the ZPG, occurs when birth plus immigration in a population just equal the plus immigration. As you can see in this figure, average total fertility rate for the less developed countries fell by more than half over the past 50 years. Much of this dramatic change was due to the China's one-child policy dahil nga ang China ang may pinakamaraming population. Progress has been slower in the least developed country, as you can see, but by 2050, they should be approaching the development or replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman of reproductive age. Next one is mortality is the other half of the population equation. Okay, let's define some terms. Crude death rates are expressed in terms of number of deaths per thousand person in a given year. And crude death rate naman is subtracted from crude birth rate given the natural increase of the population. We distinguish natural increases from the total growth rate, which includes emigration and immigration, as well as birth death. Already defined that the crude birth rate, the number of birth in a year per thousand person. Now let's proceed to the China's one-child policy. Okay, the Republic first chairman Mao Zedong believes that of all things in the world, people are the most precious. Yun daw yung paniniwala ng dating the Republic First Chairman si Mao Zedong. Noong naging chairman naman si Deng Xiaoping, became chairman on 1978, he reversed many of Mao's policy. Lahat daw ng paniniwala ni Mao Zedong or lahat ng mga policies niya is iniba nung pumalit si Deng Xiaoping. Kung si Mao Zedong, of all the things in the world, people of the most precious kay Deng Xiaoping is iba yung sa kanya. He introduced the highly unsuccessful but controversial one-child per family policy. Did you know one of the being unfair of this policy is lahat ng mga mayayaman or the politician, yung mga mayayaman is they can have many children, they can have many children as they want. While naman doon sa mga average people or the mga poor one, they can only have one. But kapag nilabag nila yung batas or policy na to, they will be harshly violated or they will be punished harshly. And because of that, naging controversial ang China's one-child policy because nag-result ng bribery, infanticide, or yung pinapatay nila yung mga infant and other crimes. Even though successful siya because the China's one-child policy is naging successful siya because bumaba yung growth or population growth rate ng China. So, successful siya pero controversial naman yung China's one-child policy. Okay, the next one. Lifespan and the life expectancy describe our potential longevity. Before that, let's define what is lifespan. Is the oldest age to which a species is known to survive. Is kung gaano katagal daw yung survival rate or yung hanggang kamatayan mo. Ang life expectancy is the average age that a newborn infant can expect to attain in a given society. Kung yung average age daw ng isang newborn infant or expected to attend in a given society. The 20th century has seen global transformation in human health and much in history. In 1990, the world average life expectancy was only about 30 years daw, which was not much higher than the average lifespan in the Roman Empire on 2000 years earlier. By 2011, as you can see in the figure, the average was 89 to 9 years. Then, life expectancy has increased nearly everywhere in the world, but the increase has lagged in the less developed countries. As you can see in the less developed countries, the increase has lagged. Next one, as you can see in this figure, there is a good correlation between an annual income and a life expectancy as to about US 4,000 per person, beyond that level which is generally enough for adequate food, shelter, and sanitation for most people. Life expectancy level out of about 75 years for men and 85 for women. The story short, as income rises, so does life expectancy up also. Above that amount, the curve levels of some countries, such as South Africa, as you can see in the figure, and Russia, have far lower life expectancies than their GDP or the world would suggest. Jordan, on the other hand, which has only 1/10 the per capita GDP or the gross domestic product of the United States, actually has a higher life expectancy. Living longer has demographic implication. Both rapidly growing countries and slowly growing countries can have a problem with their dependency ratio or the number of non-working compared to working individuals in population. At lahat naman yata ng country is nagkakaproblema sila sa mga non-working compared to mga working individuals. Sa figure na nakikita nyo, a population that is growing rapidly by natural increase has more young people than does a stationary population. As you can see naman sa figure natin, in Niger, which is growing at a rate of 3% per year, or 49% of population is in the pre-reproductive category. See in the figure the rapid growth of Niger, the male and the female, and unstable naman sa Sweden, the male and female, and declining in Singapore, as you can see. Even a total fertility rate were to fall abruptly, the total number of births and population size would continue to grow for some years as these young people enter reproductive age. This phenomenon is called population momentum. Dependency ratio, or number of non-working working individuals in the population, as I discussed earlier. Okay, the next one is the changing age structure and shifting dependency ratio are occurring worldwide. As you can see in this figure, by 2050, the UN predicted there will be 2 older person for every child in the world. Accordingly, by the mid-21st century, children under the age of 15 will make up a smaller percentage of the world population, while people over age 65 will contribute a larger share of the population. As you can see naman, at the age of 65 or older, mas malaki yung contribution niya sa population natin compared sa under age 15 years old. The next one is immigration, and immigration are important demographic factors. Let's define what is immigration. Immigration is a controversial issue in many countries. They also called the immigrant guest workers, often perform heavy, dangerous, and disagreeable work that citizens are unwilling to do. Many migrants and alien workers are of different racial ethnic background than the majority in their new home. Marami naman tayong nababalitaan ng mga immigrants or mga OFW na magtrato sila ng mga amo nila. Yung mga dapat na trabaho nila is hindi nila nagiging trabaho. According to the United Nations High Commission on Refugees, reported that in 2006, there were 28 million refugees who had left their countries for political and economical reasons, while about 25 million more were displaced persons in their own countries, while about 25 million more were displaced persons in their own countries, and 175 million migrants had left their countries or home for to look for job or greater freedom or better opportunity. The next one is the ideal family size is culturally and economically dependent. Many factors increase our desire for children. Factor that increase people desire to have babies or is called pronatalist pressure. Often, children are valuable to family not only for future income but even more as a source of current income and help with household chores. Ang mga bata raw is hindi lang daw sila bata, but they have the valuable shares to our family. Kasi sila yung tumutulong sa pag-ibig ng tubig, tumutulong sa mga gawaing bahay. Figure at the letter A, children are needed to tend livestock, care for younger children, alagaan yung mga batang kapatid nila, and help parents, tumutulong sila sa mga gawaing bahay, where agriculture is mechanized. And on the letter B naman, rural families view children just as urban families, do helpful, but not critical to survival. This affects the decision about how many children to have. Other factors discourage reproduction. In more highly developed countries, many pressure tend to reduce fertility. As you can see in the figure, shows that U.S. birth rate between 1910 and 2010, as you can see, birth rate have fallen and risen, and the rise of the birth rates is very complex. The period between 1910 and 1930 was a time of industrialization and urbanization. As you can see naman, at the end of the war, there was a baby boom as a couple were united and new families were started. Diba matapos yung war, end of the war, World War II, nagkaroon ng baby boom or nag-reunite yung mga sundalo sa mga family nila, sa mga asawa nila. So, nagkaroon ng rise of birth rate. A small echo boom occurred on 1980s as people born on 1960s began to have babies. The next one is, could we have a birth rate? Most European countries now have a birth rates below replacement level of 2.1 children per couple. Asia, Japan, Singapore, and Taiwan are also facing a child shock as fertility rate have fallen. Bumaba daw yung fertility rate ng mga nabanggit na bansa. Europe and North America accounted for 20% of the world population in 1950. This number had fallen to 15% by 1980s. Diba? Noong 1950s daw, is 20% of the world population sila. Then, noong 1980s, bumaba, naging 15% lang siya. And in the incoming 2030, Europe and North America will have 90% of population in our world population. The economist na si Van Waterberg warned that this birth rate might seriously erode the powers of Western democracies in world affairs. He points out that Europe and North America accounted for 22% of world population in 1950. The next one is, a demographic transition can lead to stable population size. In 1945, demographer Frank Notstein pointed out that the typical pattern of falling death rate and birth date due to improved living conditions usually accompanies economic development. Economic and social development influence birth and death rates. Ang ekonomiya at ang social development natin is na-influensyahan niya yung birth at death rate natin. You can see in stage 1 represent the condition and a pre-modern society, food shortage, malnutrition, lack of sanitation and medicine, accidents, and other hazards generally keep death rate in such society about 35 per 1,000 people. As you can see, the stage 1 is very stable. And in stage 2, the urbanizing industrialization, death rates often fall very rapidly. As you can see, nag-fall siya rapidly. And stage 3, birth rate fall as people see that all their children are more likely to survive and that the whole family benefits from concentrating more resources on fewer children. Take note that population continues to grow rapidly during this stage because of population momentum or the baby boomers reaching the reproductive ages. On stage 4, the post-industrial, developed countries, both birth rate and death rates are very low. There are reasons to be optimistic about population. For there are reasons to be optimistic about population. There are 4 conditions are necessary for the demographic transition to occur. Number 1, improve standard of living. Kailangan daw natin i-improve yung living natin. Increase confidence that children will survive to maturity. Kailangan maging confident tayo na ang mga bata is makakasurvive sila sa maturity. Number 3, improve social status of women. Kailangan ma-improve daw yung tayong mga babae, ma-improve daw yung social status natin. Hindi porket sa bahay lang tayo, sa bahay lang dapat tayo. Number 4, increase availability and use of birth control. Kailangan daw natin mag-increase or gumamit tayo ng mga birth control para ma-reduce or ma-accomplish natin yung demographic transition. Okay, the next one, the following factor could contribute to stabilizing population. Number 1 is growing prosperity and social reform that accompany development, reduce needs and desire for large family in the most country. Next, technology is available to bring advances to the developing world much more rapidly than was the case a century ago. And the rate of the technology transfer is faster than it when Europe and North America were developing. Ang technology daw is makakatulong siya sa developing world natin. then less developed countries have a historic pattern to follow. They can benefit from our mistake and chart course stability more quickly than they might otherwise do. Means, ang mga less developed countries daw, kailangan matutunan daw sila sa mga pagkakamali nila at maitama nila yung mga mali nila. At hindi na maulit yun. Next, modern communication, especially television, have caused a revolution of rising expectation and act as stimulus to spur change and development. Alam niyo naman na ang television is nakakatulong siya sa atin para sa development and change. Okay, the next one is many people remain pessimistic about population growth. Some argue that the only way to break out of the demographic trap is to immediately and drastically reduce population with whatever means or necessary. According sa mga iba, para daw mawala or mawala yung demographic trap is kailangan madali ang ma-reduce or mabawasan yung population growth natin. Some argues that Malthus while helping the people poor will simply increase their reproductive success and further threaten the resource on which we all depend. Accordingly, maraming nag-agree kay Malthus na if tutulungan yung mga mahihirap is magiging reproductive sila or makakatulong sila para umangat or maging developed yung country. Okay, the next one is social justice is an important the importance of consideration. The world has enough resources for everyone, but an equitable social and economic system causes maldistribution of those resources. According to them, yung world resources natin is enough sa mga tao. But because of maldistribution or hindi tamang pag-distribute ng mga resources is nagiging result ng hunger, poverty, violence, environmental degradation, and overpopulation. Ang overpopulation is a symptoms of a lack of social justice. Nga ba ang social justice? Ang social justice is the real key to success of demographic transition. A solution for all of these problems to establish a fair system, not to blame the victims. Ang dapat daw na solution sa lahat ng problema is magkaroon ng fair system or being fair to others, not to blame the victims. As you can see in this figure that they are talking about, as you can see the man with suit. I don't wish to interfere, but do you realize the world population is going to increase by nearly 50% in 20 years? What are you going to do about it? Sabi naman ng farmer, what's wrong with people? I love people. Well, so do I. Ako, hindi daw niya love. Of course, but you see where resources can support an increasing population. Sabi niya, ang world resources natin is hindi magiging enough if magiging overpopulated. Sabi naman ng farmer, I see it's a problem with resources as well as people. Sabi niya, ang problema is yung resources ay yung mga tao. Sabi naman nung nakasuot na, yes. So, sabi naman niya, sabi ng farmer, so the answer for resource control as well as birth control. So, kailangan na daw natin mag-resource control at mag-birth control. Sabi naman ng lalaki suit is, question si farmer. Well, then at again, I don't want to interfere, but do you realize that the rich 20% of the world consume about 80% of the resources? What are you going to do about that? So, bumalik sa kanya yung tanong niya nung una, sabi ng farmer, ang mga rich country daw, or rich people, consume 80% of the world resources. So, yung tanong niya sa una is bumaliktad sa kanya. Okay, the next one is women's rights affect fertility. Education and job are critical factor in fertility rate. Child survival also is crucial in stabilizing population. It has been estimated that saving 5 million children each year from easily preventable, avoid 20 to 30 per million extra births, land reform, political rights, and improved health status of women often are better indicator for total fertility and family welfare than rising GDP. You can see in this figure, to summarize the thoughts, total fertility decline as the woman education increases. As you can see, the Ethiopia, their female secondary school enrollment rate percent is very little. So, their fertility rate is very high. Unlike sa Vietnam, na Or unlike South Africa na malaki yung percentage ng educated persons sa kanila, so maliit yung fertility rate nila. So that total fertility decline as women education increases. Pag nagiging educated daw yung tao is bumababa yung fertility rate. Okay, the next one is the family planning gives us choices. Number one, let's discuss about family planning allows couple to determine the number of species of their children, kung gaano dami yung children na gusto nila. And birth control is usually means any method used to reduce birth, including abstinence, delayed marriage, contraception methods that prevent implantation of embryo, and induced abortion. Next is fertility control has existed throughout history. People have always used various techniques to control fertility, such as breastfeeding and taboos against intercourse, while breastfeeding is limited in number of children they have. Pag daw nag-breastfeeding yung tao is nalilimit daw yung number of children na gusto nila. Accordingly, other Asian techniques include abstinence, folk medicine, abortion, and infanticide. Noong daw, for the ancient time, techniques is yung mga folk medicines, abortion, at saka infanticide, or pagkitil sa buhay ng mga sanggol. Then, we shouldn't assume that other people are too ignorant or primitive to make decisions about fertility. The next one are, today there are many options. The major category of birth control techniques include avoidance of sex during fertile period, for example, celibacy, or the use of change in the body temperature or cervicular mucus to judge with ovulation will occur. Mechanical barriers that prevent contact between sperm and egg, for example, condoms, spermicides, diaphragms, cervical cups, and vaginal smooch. Surgical methods that prevent release of sperm or egg, for example, tubal ligation, and females and vasectomies and myths. Hormone-like chemical that prevent maturation or release of sperm or eggs, or that prevent embryo implantation in the uterus. For example, is estrogen plus progesterone or progesterone alone for females or Lucifol for males. Physical barrier to implantation, for example, intrauterine device, and last one is abortion. As you can see in the table 7.3, some birth control methods or pregnancy prevention rate. As you can see, the number of the women in 100 who become pregnant is, if you use birth controls or some birth control options, the pregnant woman will be less or less. You can see the next one is, what kind of future are we creating? The total number of humans is likely to be somewhere around 8 to 10 billion people. The optimistic low projection shows that world might reach about 7 billion in 2050. The most pessimistic projection assumes a constant rate of growth to 25 billion people by 2150. As you can see in figure at the top, shows 4 scenarios projected by the UN Population Division Units on 2004 revision. The optimistic or the low projection shows that world population might reach about 7 billion in 2050 and then fall back below 6 billion in 2150. The median projection suggests that growth might continue around 8.9 billion in 2050, around the stabilized. And then stabilize. Figure below, as you can see, the green one is the current use, and the violet one is the unmet need. It shows that the unmet need for family planning among married women in some representative countries. Unmet need for family planning in selected countries globally. More than 100 million women in developing countries would prepare to avoid pregnancy but do not have the access to family planning. Sa mga developing countries daw is mas prepared nila yung or nag-avoid sila to be pregnant. Pero they do not have access to family. The next one is religion and politics complicate family planning. There are 179 countries endorse the goal of universally available reproductive health service, including family planning by 2050, according sa US. Kung bakit nakaka-complicate ang family planning sa mga sa religion is because many Muslim countries encourage couples to have many children as they possible. Sa ating mga Muslims or mga Maranaw, the some encourage or they encourage family to have many children as they want. Sa Iran, in 1990, nag-decide sila na magkaroon lang ng small family. It succeeded in cutting birth rate but more than half in the 10 years. As you can see in the figure, shows that the percent of the marriage reproductive age women with two living children who don't want another child. Deep societal changes are often required to make family planning programs successful. Among the most important of these are number one, improve social and educational economic status for women. Number two, improve status for children. Acceptance of calculated choices as a valid element in life in general and in fertility in particular. Number four, social security and political stability that give people the means and the confidence to plan for the future. Number five, knowledge, availability, and the use of effective and acceptable means of birth control. That will be all. Thank you very much for the listening and watching.